NextWaveDV presents NAB 2013. Made possible by Red Rock Micro, introducing the one-man crew. Zeiss, we make it visible. Kessler Crane, innovative tools for filmmakers.
We're here at the Red Rock booth using the new one-man crew and sitting down with Vincent Laforet. Vincent, you've been everywhere here. I'm grateful that you take some time to sit down with us.
My pleasure.
Obviously, we just heard about the Movi. You had a chance to work with it. It's been pretty much revolutionizing the way that camera motion has ever been approached before.
Sure.
Tell us briefly just your experience with it and why you think it's a great tool.
Well, it's been unlike anything since Reverie with the 5D Mark II. I've known Tab since pretty much almost weeks after Reverie. The second thing I ever shot, I shot with Tab in Hawaii. It's called JOB, Jamie O'Brien. That was a little short that we did. And I've flown with him, or have had, we can't get in the little RC helicopters. He's flown helicopters for me on most of my projects. And eventually he decided to take this rig off of a helicopter and make it into handheld mount. And when I heard that, I knew this could be something special. I asked him one favor. I said, do me one favor, as a friend, let me be the first to shoot something with that, because I think it's going to do something special. And then when I actually used it, it was like the 5D all over again. I was like, this is going to really change things in a major, major way. It is for me. It's what I've always wanted to do since I picked up the 5D, which is actually just fly for a room without a lot of other stuff. And we shot over 2 nights. It was difficult as a director because we were breaking all the rules. You never shoot like 20-second takes and put them in a row. Yeah. And you're supposed to get coverage and different angles to make it more dynamic. But we were learning on the job as the first shoot out in the wild. Very similar to the 5D Mark II. We didn't have a manual. We had 1 battery, and we had a blast. We put the piece up on the blog and on Vimeo. And it's been seen over 1.3 or 4 million times already, and we've seen close to 1 million times in the first day and a half. Yeah. So it's been pretty awesome, and I think the reaction, we've got some fantastic reaction. We got, Bill Bennett, one of the top ASC DPs, very technical person, came up to the booth the other day and said this is the most revolutionary product of all of NAB. That's a stamp of approval you cannot, ask for. They were awarded a Black Diamond today, and they were awarded a Mario as well. So, this is awesome for them. I've been, having a blast working with these guys. They're cinema background people. Hugh, one of the co-founders, is a professional Steadicam operator. So he lives and breathes cinema, as does Tab as an aerial photographer or cinematographer. And they know what we need. It's the unit's $15,000. So it's going to be out of the range for a lot of people initially, perhaps, but if they think about it, it replaces a lot of other things that add up to much more than that, and it saves a tremendous amount of time in production, which is a really key point. You don't have to do these incredibly complex moves. You can do very simple sliding moves, locked off moves, pan and tilts, in a very, very fast speed.
And the portability allows you to
portability,
be able to go
put it in a suitcase in the overhead. It's 3.5 pounds, and the idea is to sell enough of those to ramp things up so that we can make it another version that's more affordable and in the hands of every filmmaker, because whether you're shooting with an iPhone, a Rebel, 5D Mark II, a 1DC, a C300, Sony, Panasonic, whatever, GH3s, or an Epic, this is what we're all dreaming about, which is to pick up a camera and go and do it solo, where you're actually panning and tilting yourself, or working with another operator and doing some really complex moves.
Obviously, we know there can be a lot of obsession with gear, but in the hands of a good storyteller, gear should be freeing and allow you to do stuff that you couldn't do else.
And that's the ideal, right? Is that it's a constant, contradictory thing, and you've got to find balance. The hardest thing in life is balance. The hardest thing is filmmaking is balance. And you want to have complex moves, but you realize you spend so much time planning for the complex moves and shooting it that you may lose a lot of spontaneity, and you may lose a variety of angles because you're just, you're nailing that one quote-unquote Copacabana shot, in Goodfellas. And the reality is that one was worth it. But a lot of the ones that we do aren't necessarily worth it. And gear, you can't do good work without good gear unless you're really talented. And one great way to compensate for that is to get all the best gear in the world. If you don't know how to use it, it's only going to slow you down. As you become a better expert at how to use it, you work faster, you know what you really need. And that's part of the education of becoming a real director, cinematographer, filmmaker, whatever position you are on crew, is about being an expert and knowing the pitfalls of every piece of gear. And the idea is that we all want to say we can just go out there and shoot. And I can honestly say that I've been, trained a little bit on Steadicam and told I had a little bit of a knack for it, but I knew that physically it was very demanding, and it would take a few years for me to feel comfortable ever doing it. So I've always worked with really experienced Steadicam operators. I've worked with Cineflex systems and Russian arms on the Pursuit cars, and I've worked with O'Connor tripods, and Kessler sliders, and Red Rock, and all the coolest stuff, and the reality is there are very few things I've ever put in my hands that make me feel like I could actually really focus more on the storytelling aspect and not how I get the shot, but just get the shot and move on to the next shot. And how am I better going to tell the story, because I have a lot more time on my hands to execute this much more efficiently and become a better storyteller.
So we're seeing technology exploding. This is almost truly the year of 4K, it seems like. In that acquisition, we went from DSLR revolution,
sure.
And we all were grateful for that.
Right.
And now it's kind of like, let's talk about some serious filmmaking tools. What are you shooting with, and what are you finding is a really great tool, and what are clients wanting on your end?
Well, clients want great work, and they want great stories. They may not know it, but they want someone who can tell. Well, they do usually. They want someone who can tell a good story, whatever the story is. And I use every camera out there, and the thing to do is to not look at what camera is shiny and you think you need to use. What's your deliverable? Who's your client? Is it the silver screen, 50-foot screen? Is it television? Are you shooting Southland or Criminal Minds? Because there's very different styles of TV shows. One's on almost all the time on dollies, and the other is 3 cameras handheld shooting guerrilla style. Are you shooting for Vimeo? Are you shooting a documentary where you don't need to be running back? An Epic's one of my favorite cameras, but I would never shoot a documentary with it because I'd have to be copying data all the time or buy a bunch of SSD cards. Whereas the C300 is a great documentary camera and film camera, but as in motion, as narrative film, and it's a great low light performance if I don't have light. You've got to consider the amount of footage you're going to shoot. So if you're shooting a 30-second commercial, you can pretty much shoot any camera you want. If you're shooting a 2-year-long documentary at 4K in full RAW, you're going to die within the first week, if not hours. So you got to learn the tools. It's a craft, and if you don't know it, you surround yourself with professionals. That's why they have DPs and DIT specialists and post houses like Light Iron or eFilm or Company 3 and colorists. And filmmaking is about collaborating, and these new tools make our lives easier, and they make us do things that we couldn't do before. But they don't replace people. They really do not replace craft. And you can give the most advanced cinema systems to someone who doesn't know what they're doing, and you can give the most antiquated, almost pinhole camera to an expert, and you will quickly see that it is about the ideas and execution. And it's never going to go away.
So what caused you to fall in love with filmmaking? Because you obviously fantastic photographer. We've seen a ton of your work. Mm-hmm. How did that progression happen for you?
Well, I was surrounded by film from a young age. Coming from a filmmaking family, I was on film sets when I was a kid. My dad was a set photographer at Premiere Magazine in France. So my first memories are on film sets. I love the camaraderie and the ambiance, especially on a European film set. You would have lunch as a crew together with the cast every day, over a bottle of wine or many. And that's been part of my DNA. I consider everyone I work with on a crew or cast my family as much as I can. And photography was I would never give a single day away of what I experienced as a photographer, but it's a very singular pursuit or individualistic pursuit. And after over 20 years of doing that, I felt the need to do something different. I always knew I wanted to make a leap into filmmaking. The 5D Mark II came out, and that's what I'm currently pursuing. I direct commercials these days. I sometimes DP as well, shorts as well, directing and DPing. And I am working on my first feature film. So I'm having the time of my life. And then when you discover technology like the Movi, it really puts a spring in your step, because you know that it's not just you benefiting, it's everyone else. And there's also a little bit of a craft in explaining to people why this technology is relevant. When someone at Vimeo saw the first behind the scenes. He said, I don't really get it, and maybe you should do a voiceover. And it was a brilliant suggestion. It was actually Blake Whitman of Vimeo who said, you know, I don't really understand based on what it is you have here. Why don't you do a voiceover? And every time I hear it myself, it was a brilliant suggestion, because the reality is technologies aren't always obvious to even the manufacturers to what they can do. Remember, the 5D Mark II was not supposed to be a video camera. They were not ready for that, and didn't necessarily want that to happen at Canon. And when they did, it took them quite a while to realize that this is going to happen whether you plan for it or not. And I always find that my job is to look at every piece of kit and see how I could put it best to use. And you know, hopefully in the way it was intended, but I have much more fun if I can find a piece that was never intended, or a way it was never intended to be used, and surprise the manufacturer themselves.
So what would you say to somebody that, you know, they go online, they see the gear, they see the lighting, they see, you know, all these different things, you know, they look at NAB and they get overwhelmed, and they're just wanting to get started. What would you say to them?
I would say learn to shoot films with your iPhone, edit it on your iPhone, don't get involved in lensing, lighting, just learn how to move the camera and learn how to pace. Learn about story. That doesn't matter what you whip your iPhone out, or your Epic or F65 or whatever it is. If you don't have a good story, it doesn't matter. You know, it really comes down to that. It's the oldest art in human culture is the art of storytelling. And the truth is, there aren't that many new stories. We're just retelling the same stories in different, unique ways. And it's the way that, you know, it's written, and it's the way that it's executed by the director and the DP, and of course the performances by the actor. And it's a real art, and it's a collaborative art form, and it's one of the most exciting art forms out there. So, you know, get the basic kit that you need, rent as much as you can, and study storytelling, and break down your favorite films. Your favorite friend in learning to be a good filmmaker is the pause and rewind button on your remote. And when you see a scene that makes you want to cry, or angry, or feel something, rewind it and break it down, and you'll learn. It's better than going to film school, in my opinion, if you're able to break down what made that work, why the music was important, or why the lighting was important, or the pacing, or the cut, or the camera movement, or the lens choice, etc., etc., etc.
Thanks so much, Vincent, for
You're
your
more
time.
than welcome. Thank you.
Great advice.
Thanks, Tony. Cheers.
Subscribe to NextWaveDV, where filmmakers get educated.